welcome to the Global Learning Office's GLOVicariously webinar series. My name is Alison Alvelta, and I participated in the University of Ghana Legon program in Ghana this year, so I came back in March. Today's webinar topic is human trafficking and children's rights in Ghana. This webinar will last approximately 1 hour with a presentation followed by Q&A. All participants will remain muted, so feel free to send any questions to the chat Q&A, and I will collect them to answer after the presentation. You are welcome to turn on your cameras or keep them turned off. We will launch a quick poll at the end. To introduce today's speaker, we have Inara Ganji, a GESI Ghana program alum from the summer of 2019. Thanks, guys.
Thank you all for joining us today. Serge Akpalou has been working as a young professional in the humanitarian sector for the last 5 years. A graduate in international relations and conflict resolution from the University of Nebraska, Serge worked in various reputable organizations such as World Chicago in the United States, International Crisis Group in Kenya, and Challenging Heights in Ghana. Originally from Togo, Serge has been extensively engaged in study abroad programs in the past 3 years. While at Challenging Heights, a grassroots organization fighting against child trafficking in Ghana, Serge served as a partnership development manager. Based in Ghana over a cumulative 10 years, Serge currently works as the GESI Ghana site coordinator through its partner Amisage and the project manager for the European Union funded project that aims to support government authorities and civil society organizations in the fight against human trafficking in Ghana. So Serge, you can go ahead.
All right. So, hi everyone. Thanks, Alison. Thanks, Inara. I have a slide here that I would like to share. Just try it again. Okay. Here you go. I believe it works for everyone. So thanks again for thanks GESI for the opportunity to engage with students, faculty, public, and all that on issues of human trafficking and on relation with child rights in Ghana. Prior to starting, I would like to say that even though the facts that I've raised in my presentation are more general facts that are known of everyone, like every other ideas are kind of personal observation of how things have been so far in Ghana. So normally this presentation takes a lot of time, and normally also I like to have more of an interaction kind of setting whilst addressing the topics of human trafficking. But for the sake of this short time that we have, I'll try and wrap things up pretty fast so we can have enough time to have conversation on the topic. So again, we are looking at human trafficking in Ghana today, an emphasis on child trafficking along Lake Volta. So first of all, we'll have a global picture of human trafficking. So we have a world population of 7.8 billion. And out of that 7.8 billion, we have an estimated 40.3 million people that are being exploited. And the 40.3 million would be approximately 3 times the size of the population of Illinois. Since we are in Chicago today, I'll try and bring it close home so we can have a more direct picture of what we are talking about. So about 3 times the population of Illinois are supposedly being exploited. Of course, human trafficking is a general phenomenon. It's affects any country in the world. There's no country that wouldn't say it has traces of human trafficking in it. So in the US, with a population of 320 million, the data are from Global Slavery Index, and this were data from 2018. So approximately in the US, we have about 403,000 people that are living in modern slavery. Bringing it back to Ghana, we have a population of 30 million currently. And out of that 30 million, we have 133,000 that are living in modern slavery. And when we say modern slavery, it includes sex trafficking, child labor exploitation in agriculture, in the fishing, quarrying, and different other sectors. So, of course, my topic is going to focus on the Lake Volta. And this is just a picture of a map of Ghana. Just gives you an idea of how the lake is placed as far as Ghana is concerned. So as Ghana attained its independence on the 6th March 1957, there was a need to develop our own electricity and also to cater for the whole country, and why not cater for other countries, nearby countries like Togo, Benin, Ivory Coast, and Burkina. So according to that kind of motivation to develop our own hydroelectric dam, the Akosombo Dam was set up in 1965. And the excess water from the dam, which first of all was not expected to exceed that much, actually went out of the way, displacing about 78,000 people, flooding like 15,000 homes, and destroying 740 villages. So as that was happening, the lake was now, at some point in time, it was recognized as one of the biggest or the largest man-made lakes in the world. So the surface area of the Lake Volta is about 3,283 square miles, and it accounts for 3.6% of the land area of the whole Ghana. Again, trying to put it in context, the 3,283 square miles would be 14 times the size of Chicago. So if you take Chicago, the limitation of Chicago, you have to multiply that by 14 times to have an idea of how many land the Lake Volta covers. So it's quite huge. So, of course, prior to being a lake, it was a big forest. So as the water settled in, some trees were not able to, some trees did, even though they died, they were still poking out from the water, and under the water there's a lot of tree stumps and all that. So bringing it again to the topic of the day, which is child labor and trafficking, I think it's important to have an idea of what trafficking is about. There are many different definitions of what human trafficking means. The UN definition is there, quite a long piece of definition because it's a bit difficult, but for the purpose of this topic, I'll just try to summarize it in some few words. So human trafficking is actually the movement of people for the purpose of exploitation. It's a kind of modern slavery, and bringing it to Ghana again, child labor is a particular problem. So child labor basically means that children's work interferes with their education, development, their health, and so on. So in Ghana currently, we have about 22% of children that are engaged in child labor, 14% in hazardous labor. So based on the ILO data of 2013, we have 49,000 children that are working on the said Lake Volta, and 21,000 are involved in hazardous labor. A study from IJM, International Justice Mission, in 2017 revealed that about 60% of the children that are working on the Lake Volta have been trafficked over there. So when we say traffic, we moved from one point A to a point B for the purpose of exploitation. So going into some of the root causes of child trafficking, or why people are being pushed to send their kids there. This is just to give a bit of idea. So one of the main causes of child trafficking here in Ghana has been poverty. Poverty in the sense that in most of our fishing communities along the coast, we have families, on average, I would say families of 6 but we have families as much as 10, families as much as 12. So in those families already, I always kind of try to put myself in those situations. Now I have like 2 kids. So having 2 kids, how difficult it is to manage them. I wonder how 12 kids, you can be able to handle all the 12 kids, even whilst you don't have a good job. You don't have any job, you're a fisherman or you're a fish smoker. So traffickers usually would come in at a very vulnerable time and tell you, I know you're poor, I know you have 10 kids or more. I would like to take some of them to school so they will become more trained and they can make a life for themselves, and they will come and support your other children. And usually some parents fall for that. Traffickers go to the extent of sometimes even coming up with bringing another child with them, dressing the child very nicely so that it looks very convincing. So to tell you, this child, for example, I've been with him for, he has been with me, sorry, for like 5 years. And when I took him, he was nothing, and now he's at this stage. So if you let me have your child, I would be able to do the same thing for him. And which brings to the second topic, to the second cause, which is the naivety and ignorance. So in Ghana, there is a culture whereby you can move from your house and go and stay with an uncle, go and stay with a grandma, go and stay with a grandpa. It's totally normal. So people don't really know about this practice of human trafficking. So for them, it's just a normal way of life that we are all used to. Each and every one of us have had the opportunity to stay with an uncle, stay with a grandpa or anything like that during the course of their life. And whilst you do that, they can give you work to do and you have to do it. But there is a slight underlining there that is not clear for every, for every parent. So that's when the factors get into play. So family separation, size and neglect, which is our third point here. Again, imagine in a scenario where you have a family of 10 and the husband decides that I'm leaving. And of course, most of the families in the coastal communities in Ghana, they get married traditionally. So we have traditional marriage, which has no legal ramification. It's just, so even with the traditional marriage, you have the right to get to marry as many wives as you want. There's no restrictions on that. And so the man can decide that I'm leaving the family. And once he decides to leave, all the 8 kids become the responsibility of the woman. He has no responsibility whatsoever to take the kids along with him or to even cater for them after all. So it can be some other issues and he can decide just, I don't want to take care of them and they're all yours. And the trafficker would again use the opportunity, knowing that you'll definitely be struggling with some of your kids. Let me have some of them. I'll take them to the lake. They'll work for you, or they would go to school and then you'll get some money. So that's the third point. So the fourth point is the weak law enforcement and policy implementation. So we have certain laws that now fight against human trafficking or addresses the issue of human trafficking and child rights in Ghana. But the implementation is quite another challenge. It's very difficult to monitor even the changes or to see how things are going as far as that's concerned. So again, talking about the laws and the responses that we have. So this response is looking at both civil society organizations and the government in what they have done so far in tackling human trafficking in Ghana. So one of the main tools in the fight against human trafficking in Ghana has been the Human Trafficking Act, which was enacted in 2005. So this act brought about a secretariat that is that is coordinating all activities in as far as human trafficking is concerned in Ghana. And that secretariat coordinates or work hand in hand with law enforcement agencies and NGOs also working in the field. So when I say law enforcement agencies, again, with the Act, we have been able to have specialized services in, for example, I take the Ghana Police Service, the Ghana Immigration Service, the Economic and Organized Crime Office, and I believe there's a last one I can't kind of remember right now, but there's those specialized offices now that cater for the victims. So those offices, those units work hand in hand with NGOs. NGOs, of course, one dear to my heart, that's, I mean, where I've worked before, Challenging Heights, also work in that realm. We have actually a coalition of NGOs against child trafficking, where we have the likes of International Justice Mission, International Needs Ghana, and many how do you call organizations that work in that field. So as the fight goes on, we also try to develop a national plan of action that kind of guides Ghana gradually towards what we are trying to achieve. So the plan of actions actually reveals 4 fundamental P's that all stakeholders in the fight against human trafficking adhere by. And I'll get to those 4 P's in some few slides. So the standard operating procedure is also one of the 2 that came as very handy as to regulate what and who does what exactly at one particular junction. So if you're the police, you're supposed to go on rescue. You're the Department of Social Welfare, you're supposed to cater for the children. And you're the NGO, you're supposed to work hand in hand with all of them. So everyone knows exactly what they are supposed to do as far as the fight against human trafficking and focusing an emphasis on child trafficking is concerned. So again, talking about the 4 Ps mentioned in the NPA, we have these 4 fundamental areas, which are the prevention, protection, prosecution, and partnership. So these 4 areas are very important. You cannot do without one, because you just bring in the problem all around again. So it's always best to tackle all these 4 Ps all together. So prevention, it's usually where NGOs or the government would say we are doing some community sensitization or raising awareness on the issues of human trafficking, or sometimes trying to provide some kind of assistance to the victims or to potential victims so that they don't fall prey to these traffickers. So the second point, which is the protection, is looking at the rescue of victims that have already been trafficked, their rehabilitation, their reintegration, and of course, monitoring and seeing how best they are able to cope again with being in a society. So normally the protection bit is a part that I like to elaborate extensively on. So sometimes you have an idea of what, for example, goes into a rescue, what goes into a rehabilitation, and what goes into reintegration. But again, for the sake of time and for the sake of interaction, we can talk about that in a few minutes later. So prosecution, which is one of the difficult parts, has to do with convictions. How many convictions does Ghana do Ghana have, like, as far as human trafficking cases are concerned? I believe in the last 2 years, each year we were able to have 10 different convictions as such cases of about 137 or 100 and so, which is not quite encouraging, but it's a very big step ahead because previously we were not even recording any conviction at all. So it's kind of coming up together. And the partnership, which is essential in all the 3 Ps, is about partnership, whereby every single actor working in the field of trying to fight against human trafficking need to work together so that they can actually achieve more results than just working separately. So some of the challenges that have come up in tackling or fighting against human trafficking is the fact that there's inadequate resources and funding. So this cuts across each and every sector, whether it's the government or a civil society organization, NGOs. There's always an issue with resources and funding. And that is something that, well, I think it's difficult, but it's one of those things that would unfortunately be always hindering the fight. Because the more resources and the more funding you have, the more we can do and the more we can achieve on the field. So cultural norms, again, according to that, which is back again to the second root cause, naivety and ignorance, even though you sometimes go ahead and try to explain things to certain parents, they just don't understand. It's a cultural thing. It is what it is. My child is going to his uncle to school. What do you have? What's your problem with that? Allow him to go to school and all that. So those are some of the challenges that we also face when discussing or having arrangements with the community. Of course, we have also lack of shelters. There's not enough shelters in the country to cater for all the children that are being rescued. Currently, the government doesn't have many shelters on its own. The CSOs have some shelters that the government sometimes work hand in hand in to take care of the victims. So the next challenge, for example, as far as prosecution is concerned, is the delay in court proceedings. And this comes with a lot of layers. You have a delay of a personal, like someone not being able to really do the work because they don't even understand what you are talking about. Or you have sometimes delays in even the investigation not being done properly. So you need to go back and do it all over again. And the last part, which is interference, is something that most of the time people wouldn't like to talk about, but it's more of people of, I would say, privilege or prestige in the community. If they know that the trafficker is a good friend to me or a good, how do I say this? Like someone who can help me achieve something more in the future, they will step in and try and see how they can help the person so the person doesn't get too many too many issues when it comes to the courts and all that. So all those things hinder prosecution and all that. I know I would have loved to stop there, but I can see I have so much more time. So I'll just go back a little bit, if I'm allowed, to just touch a bit on the protection bit of things. So when we talk about protection, again, we have rescue, rehabilitation, and reintegration. So rescue is the most, I would say, the daunting task of the whole thing when you have to go on the lake to kind of rescue the kids. So of course, before you have to get there, you need to have done your pre-investigation. And in that pre-investigation, you have to arrange a list that we call a rescue list. And that rescue list, you need to have three main information. One is the name of the trafficker. Second is the name of the slave kid or the slave child, like his real name. And the third one is the community where they are. So if you fail to get one of these answers, there's no way you can do a proper rescue. So whenever we say real name here is the fact that some children get trafficked as early as 2 years old. And some, they don't even know, like when they grow up there, they don't even know where they're coming from and all that. So sometimes as they get there, the slave masters will try to change their names so that they can not be able to go back to wherever they're coming from. So it's not only important to have their real name, but also have the name that they have been given on the lake. Then you now go to the lake and you have normally 3 different steps. And of course, there's in no situation should you do a rescue in Ghana without the police. NGOs would support, but it's the main mandate of the police to do the rescue. So you can have the information because you are more community-based, and you can share the information with the law enforcers, but in no situation should you be at the forefront of that rescue because you don't have the mandate to even do that. So going on a rescue, you need the police, and of course you need the Department of Social Welfare. So they would cater for the child as the child has been rescued. So once you get on the lake, you have 3 ways to go about it. The first one is to kind of negotiate with the slave master. When I say negotiate, it doesn't imply giving money to the slave master. No, it's kind of explaining to them that their practice is something that is punishable by law, because most of the times, some of them act or they pretend they don't know about the issue. So we try to warn them and not maybe put them into too much trouble. So you go first on a friendly note for the person to just release the child that you can take to a shelter. So if the slave master then refuses, then the next time it's now all up to the police to go and do their job. So that doesn't even imply anything. So you can either decide to do the negotiation, or you can just decide for the police to just go and do the rescue. And sometimes rescues are difficult because, again, as you get there, there are cultural norms that you have to abide by. You don't come to someone's house in Ghana and the parents are around and you just go straight forward to the person. You need to meet the head of the family and you need to seek permission from the head to talk to that person. So it's a whole process that sometimes could take up to 8 hours, maybe just talking to the chief. The chief needs to bring in the people that are under him to discuss if we should allow the person even to meet the culprit and all that, and negotiation and all that. So the third way of doing a rescue is pretty much just like on a raid. So you just see a child on the lake and he's not allowed to be there while school is in session. Then the police can just decide to take over the child and do some kind of tracing later on to find out if the kid was actually trafficked or not. Then after those 3 different ways of doing it, then you can now take the child to a temporary shelter, preferably, because you now have to group them together in an attempt to send them back to whichever the closest shelter is. So as you're doing that, you also need a police clearance to testify that all these children, are in my possession and like they are in my custody. So I am the one catering for them and I'm not using them for anything, for any wrongdoing. I'm not going to traffic them. I'm actually taking them to a shelter. So once the children get to the shelter, once you get the form and you're able to send the children back to the shelter, then you are able to rehabilitate, give them psychosocial support, feed them appropriately, give them sometimes literacy or computer knowledge, because some of them have maybe never been to school. Because on the lake, you can have 1 class in the whole month, because it depends on availability of the teachers and also sometimes the structure around there, if it's conducive enough to be having recurrent class. And if it rains, then basically there's no class at all. So they don't really have much knowledge into those things. So you have to now help them, teach them, and provide them the medical treatments that they need because they've been abused on the lake and all that. And then again, those that feel they are quite older, that they don't want to now go back to school and all, you kind of let them try a vocational training or apprenticeship so that they can later on be by themselves. The aim of being at the shelter is actually to make them feel like kids once again, enjoy the courtesy of playing with their friends and having fun time and all that. So as they are at the shelter, there's supposed to be a team that will be tracing their families and all that. So as the families have been traced and there have been connections that have been made between the victims and its parent or whoever we are able to identify, then after 3 to 9 months at the shelter, the children or the child will get reintegrated with the family. And once they are with the family, they'll be monitored most of the time for a certain number of years, sometimes 2 years. Depending on the case of the child, they can be monitored as long as 3, 4 years, however it is, so that you are sure they are back in the community and are really safe and not at risk of being re-trafficked, because re-trafficking happens certain times if you don't follow up appropriately. Then during that time, of course, you also want to engage the parents who maybe prior to the child being sent to the lake, the parents were poor. So you need to now give them some kind of livelihood to help them sustain the child and any other child maybe that's around. So sometimes there are subventions that have been done. NGOs also do that. The government also has a scheme that they call the Livelihood Empowerment Against Poverty. So some of these parents can also get enrolled on that list and be allowed to benefit from that scheme and able to also raise their standard. So like I said, I wanted to leave enough time to discuss and have a lot of things to talk about. And I'm hoping to have a nice time just discussing ideas or just answering questions. So that would be it for now. So I'll just leave it up to the questions. Thank you.
So I'm going to go ahead and read some questions while I wait for the questions to be sent. To me, I'm actually going to, do you mind if I ask you one to start off?
Sure.
Okay.
No problem.
So when I was abroad, I noticed a lot of hawkers are children, and that there's a lot of children that are working in general with their families at stores, et cetera. And how do we see that? Do we see any of the child labor contributing to those who are involved in hawking, or is it primarily involved with fishing?
My focus was, again, on child trafficking on the lake, that is the fishing industry, but I can definitely provide an answer to that. So in the Children's Act, a child is not supposed to work until at least they are 14. So 14 is when you can do light work. And light work can be maybe helping in the house, helping your parents maybe in the store and all that, but not doing any kind of heavy work. Fishing is quite heavy. The reason actually why traffickers go for kids is because the adults will not stand the job, they run away. So even if you pay him, he would prefer not to even do the job than just stay, because the child would wake as early as 2, sometimes 3 a.m., go and put in the nets in the lake, just trying to catch fishes, and then go back, set different nets, and then later on come during the day to pull those nets. And if the net gets stuck, as you've seen, there are tree stumps in the water and all that, the child is the one who is going to dive into that water to disentangle the net. And we've had instances whereby many children have dived in and not even come out again. Or some dived in and maybe they were injured by some of the branches that are under the water, because it's full of tree stumps and all that under there. Getting back again a bit to your topic, or to your question, which is those on the street, sometimes it's also kind of a scheme, actually, if I'll put it like that, or a scam. Some of them are employed by even those begging on the streets. I'm sure you've also seen some of the children also begging on the streets. Some people will actually employ them and put them on the street to do that kind of work. All that is illegal. But again, even though the government or some NGOs may step in to take care of that, the issue still remains. If you take them, where do you put them? Because you don't even have the shelters to put them there. So that's what makes it a bit challenging. They are not supposed to be in the street selling, and it's not supposed to be something that is encouraged. But those who don't know about how the whole thing works just feel like, oh, they are in need, you need to supply them, or you need to help them, you need to buy their stuff or give them money, and so on and so forth. Yeah. I hope I was able to answer your question.
What interventions have been considered by the government or NGOs working in this area to address the responsibilities of the father in terms of cycles of child abandonment, child custody, or child support, etc.?
That's a good question, and it has always been one of the difficult ones to address, because normally you'd have the children return to a family. So if you actually have the children, the parents punished, because that's what the law says. Whosoever has been involved in the chain of trafficking should be punished or should be jailed a minimum 5 to 25 years. But if you jail them, again, in a community whereby everyone knows every single person, if your parents get arrested because of you, you can easily become like the outcast of the community, because no one wants to deal with you. And again, your parents are the best people who can take care of you. So most of the times, the government or everyone working in the field would try at first to be lenient and maybe ask the parents to pay some fine to the to court or and all that. But normally it's supposed to be a jail time. But again, like I said, if a jail time happens, then it's really difficult to really rehabilitate or reintegrate the child in his community. And you have to be looking at different angles to tackle that. And it doesn't really solve the matter, because the child is again going to be at risk, and the child risks again to be trafficked. So some versions will come in for the parents, warnings will come in. Sometimes they would get light jail sentences, not up to the 5 years. But usually that's a topic that is usually difficult when even addressing the issues on how to tackle the issue involving especially like biological parents to the child.
Great, thank you. Most times it may be a scam. However, there are times where the children who hawk on the street are doing it because of the cost of school fees. So what would you say about the children in that situation?
Cost of school fees. Currently there's a free education system in place. I don't want to sound like a politician, so so there's a free system in place whereby we have children who can attend school without having to pay. I mean, they definitely pay certain stuffs, but not as much as they do. And currently, it goes all the way to senior high school level. So now, for children not to be using school as an excuse to, I'm trying to pay my school fees and being in the street, it's not quite valid to some extent when you ask me, because there are provisions out there for those who can't even afford. You can still make it to school, to a public school funded by the government, and be able to go to school. In some of the regions where it's a bit difficult, like I'll take the northern part of the country, yes, there are instances whereby children actually have to go and sell before they go to school, because that's the money they will use to eat at school, for example. And that is something that is though unfortunate, is quite common in the northern part of the country. But right now, as in Accra, it's quite difficult to envisage that a child is not is hawking down the street because they are not able to pay their school fees or anything like that.
Sorry. What indicators help rescuers realize that a child is trafficked, not just working with the family? Or not working with family?
Yeah, normally, the funny thing or the weird thing is that normally the traffickers most of the time have their children with them on the lake. And when you go, usually they are, the children, their own children are at school, attending classes and all that. But is the other people, like children that they have gone for to work with them, they are the ones that are working on the lake. But notwithstanding that, what you can use to identify all that is based predominantly in the pre-investigation that you do before getting on the lake. In instances where raids happen and you get to pick a child, you still, like I said previously, you still investigate to know if the child is actually trafficked there or the parents live there. And if the parent lives there as well, it's also an offense because fishing is considered hazardous labor. They are not supposed to be fishing. So you pretty much still have a case. And to be honest, most cases in courts get ruled as child labor, even though sometimes you can have layers of trafficking. But again, with maybe bad investigations and all that, it sometimes doesn't get that tag of human trafficking or child trafficking on it whilst it's being discussed at that kind of level. So you definitely know during your investigations if the children is trafficked there or the parents are actually there or not.
And are the siblings often tracked together or are they separated? Trafficked, excuse me, together, or are they separated?
No, they are separated, but you can have instances where you have 2 or 3 children from a same mother or a same family being trafficked with that particular slave master. So it happens, but normally the slave master can go in for different kids from different homes and work with them.
What do community sensitization programs addressing child trafficking look like? And how do you get communities to understand how deep-rooted and problematic this issue is?
The community sensitizations, what would they look like? Well, currently I would say it's more like a derba or like a gathering, which is actually much difficult now because of COVID regulations and all that. So you can't really do effective sensitization or community or awareness campaigns. So you have, I believe you have a group that would go to a specific community and try to address the issues, but just having a conversation with them. As for the roots, the problem has always been the fact that everything is almost linked. And usually, I know some organizations who actually don't believe poverty should be a reason for you to traffic your child. So it kind of differs from where whoever is going to do the community sensitization stands. But again, if you have a real interaction with the community, sometimes playing video clips that have been done by other organizations working in the field and all that, just to let some of the parents know that if you let your child go, this is exactly what is going to happen, or this is what might happen to your child and all that. So at least during that space in time, you are able to address certain issues and even have the opportunity of them feeding you in with information. Like, for example, I have my child that has been gone for some time. The uncle that came for him, the uncle is not responding to his phone, and I get to speak to the child very little, like maybe once and all that. Can you just check it for me and all that? So we get even some of the cases through doing the community sensitization and awareness campaigns. But as for solving the problem, again, it's quite difficult. You can just do it once at a time, even though you want to do all the 4 Ps together. It's not something that you can just, it has been a way of life for a very long time. So it's taking quite some time to address, but in the longer run, we are hoping that it would reduce. Again, the figures that I provided for the children on the lake are a bit dated. And I think that's also one of the challenges that we faced, is the fact that we don't have current data to actually back all the work that is being done by all the great NGOs or great government institutions in the fight against human trafficking.
Sorry. Can you talk about the EU-funded project you're involved in and what efforts you're organizing to support the government and NGOs working in this area? What is the role of extender funders? How much does this work rely on foreign aid or global philanthropy?
Well, well, I wasn't tied up to that, but I'll try and answer. So the EU funding is, so the EU funds a lot of programs in Ghana to fight not only human trafficking, but different projects, child labor and all that. And this particular funding is to, again, support the civil society organizations and government institutions in the fight against human trafficking over a period of 4 years. So the project has 4 main components. So the one of them is to look at the institutional consolidation of the Human Trafficking Secretariat, like make it more credible, more visible, more active in its way of coordinating issues of human trafficking in the country. The second one has to do with the law enforcement, trying to get to a stage where we have more prosecution and less cases being adjourned or being transferred into child labor cases, even though evidences or figures, like the facts are there to prove to that, but because they are not being well fought in court, they just get dismissed or get changed into something else. So in that component, we have to work with lawyers, with judges, prosecutors to kind of like boost their capacity in that. The third one is looking at protection of victims, supporting shelters, supporting the Human Trafficking Fund, which is a fund that so a few years back had no money in it, but currently it has like 1 million cedis. I would say close to $200,000 in it to for the Human Trafficking Secretariat to run perfectly, like to run with other agencies and all that. And the fourth one has to do with regional cooperation, because the project is a 6-country project from, how do you call it? Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, Benin, and Nigeria. So all these 6 countries trying to foster a relationship between them in information sharing and all, because human trafficking, again, and this is not solely focusing on child trafficking, it's actually like a whole human trafficking, sex trafficking, migration, and all that. So it's all to foster that relationship between all these countries. That's the fourth component is also coming into play. So that's basically around what the project is doing or what we are seeking to achieve at the end of 2022, if I'm correct. Yes. So I don't know if I fully answered. I know there was a second part on that question. I don't know if I've answered that as well.
The second part, and I think that this is important to touch base, at least in the work that I've done with think tanks and such, about that. What is the role of extender funders, and how much does this work rely on foreign aid or global philanthropy?
Oh, I would say it's quite a lot, because again, the government just spend like close to $200,000 a year on human trafficking, which is not quite enough. And when I say human trafficking, all the children, all the adults that have been trafficked, mostly from Nigeria to Ghana, or even some of the victims that have been like Ghanaians that have left Ghana to the Gulf countries, for example. So all of that, plus prevention activities, law enforcement, rescues, and all that has to come from that funding, and it's actually not enough. So it relies really, really big on foreign aid. As far as human trafficking is concerned, there's a huge like they rely a lot on foreign, not only again my projects, but also like I said, IOM, International Organization of Migration, they also do the same thing. International Justice Mission, they do the same thing. So there's a lot of players working together with the government to achieve that same purpose of ending human trafficking in Ghana.
Have there been any instances where the trafficker has a relationship with the parents of the trafficked?
Yeah, there have been. Maybe not sometimes the trafficker directly, but the person who was a middleman to send the child to the trafficker was an uncle, an auntie, or even grandparents. It's happened before that even grandparents are involved because they just can't even take care of the child, and sometimes they just need money to cater even for themselves. So that's something that's happened. I mean, in some few instances, yes, it has.
And I think we have time for one or two more questions. I was wondering about the role of corruption and how that plays in to, and I think specifically in terms of how we see the involvement of the government and the police force in particular.
Yeah, I mean, corruption is, the field of human trafficking is actually not too, I would say not too, I mean, corruption it happens one way or the other at some point. Like that's what I said about the challenges, interference and all that. But it's not prone like some areas where, for example, you know that it's just corruption throughout and all that. So, and we have, to be honest, we have people of, especially when you talk about the government, you have certain people of integrity that are working at those offices. So they would argue it and they will fight it out. Of course, there are some of them that they will lose it, but mostly it's difficult when talking about corruption in those senses or at that level. It would be it's not something that hinders too much, even though interference sometimes can mean something altogether, not necessarily corruption, but someone using his weight to maybe push down a case or anything like that. So there are various ways around it, not financially or anything of the sort. So I would say we've had cases whereby the person can be either from a constituency where a certain maybe member of parliament can say, I don't have human trafficking in my community. So that's time that person will stick their neck out or say anything possible to avoid that person from that community to even be jailed or anything of the sort. So it does exist, it plays its role, but it's not too obvious, like, or it's not too hindering like in certain other areas.
Got it.
I don't know if I've answered that, or you want me to elaborate a bit more?
That's great. That's very helpful. I think we're approaching our end of time. So I wanted to say thank you very much. And I'm gonna
It's a pleasure.
Give it over to Anara.
Okay. Let's give another round of applause for Serge. Of course, you can't do it, so just like send the claps, I guess. Thank you for joining us for this week's webinar, which is actually the last in the series.
Yeah.
So enjoy the rest of your day. Take care and thanks for attending.
Thank you.